And welcome to everyone who's joined us so far. I'm going to give people another minute or so to trickle in. We are expecting a pretty large audience today, and I want to give them a minute before we get started. While we're waiting to start, please feel free to put your name and where you're joining us from in the chat. We'd also love if you have a special memory of Oakland 16th Street Station. Maybe you've ridden the train from there once in the past or know someone who used to work there. We'd love for you to share that in the chat as well. And we'll be starting the program here in less than a minute or so. Great, and it's so nice to see such a spread both from the Bay Area and from other parts of the state, and it looks like the country as well. So welcome everyone to today's program. My name is Lisa Versace. I am the Programs and Engagement Manager here at the California Preservation Foundation. Excuse me. CPF is a 501c3 nonprofit organization providing statewide leadership, advocacy, and education to ensure the protection of California's diverse cultural heritage and its historic places. Our work is made possible by the generous support of our members, donors, and sponsors, including our education sponsor, WJE. If you're not already a member, we invite you to join our preservation community by going to californiapreservation.org/membership. Today's program is going to be all about Oakland's 16th Street Station. Built in 1912, it was a major depot for Western migration. Our speaker, Dorothy Lazard, a writer and former head librarian of the Oakland History Center, will trace the history of the station and its place in the political and economic development of Oakland and the East Bay. Later, she'll be joined by Daniel Levy, Naomi Schiff, and Felicia Favroth, President, Secretary, and Treasurer of OHA's Board of Directors, respectively, to answer your questions about the history of the station, as well as its current state and its potential future. If you have questions for Dorothy or a member of OHA, please ask it using the Q&A button, which can be found at the bottom of your Zoom window. If you don't see this button, click on the More button at the bottom right, and you should see Q&A in the menu that pops up. Dorothy will be further introduced by our program moderator, Felicia Favroth. Felicia is a Bay Area native, entrepreneur, and lover of historic preservation. In a past life, Felicia was a real estate broker and now owns Skincare by Felicia, her own line of ethically sourced skincare products made from her studio in Old Oakland. As mentioned earlier, she also serves on Oakland Heritage Alliance's Board of Directors as their treasurer. Felicia, I will hand it over to you to introduce Dorothy and to get today's program underway.
Well, thank you, Lisa. This is an honor to be able to introduce Dorothy. So Dorothy Lazard began her library career at UC Berkeley, earning her Master's of Library and Information Studies degree in 1983. Joining the Oakland Main Library in 2000, managing the history, biography, architecture, and map collections, and later led the Oakland History Center from 2009 to 2021, hosting lectures and writing about local history. Celebrated for her work in local history, she received a 2022 Partners in Preservation Lifetime Achievement Award from Oakland Heritage Alliance, and in 2023, Oscar Lewis Award for Outstanding Contribution to Western History from the Book Club of California. Alongside her library career, Dorothy Lazard holds an MFA in creative nonfiction, is a published writer, with works featured in various publications, and her recent memoir, What You Don't Know Will Make a Whole New World, released in 2023 and available for sale from Heyday. Let me not push it again. Available from sale from Heyday. So thank you, Dorothy, for being with us today, and we are excited to see your presentation.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to share this presentation. It was great to have another opportunity to learn more about this station, which sits, like a palace on the edge of our city. And it reminded me of how much geography plays a role in our lives here in the Bay Area. So let me get my presentation going here. So Oakland's location on the continental edge of the country brought it many advantages. One of the most important being it was chosen as the western terminus of the Transcontinental Railroad. The city's rail stations fed a steady westward migration from 1869 through the first half of the 20th century. The resulting population boom not only developed the city of Oakland, but the entire Bay Area. Southern Pacific's 16th Street Station was a principal point of arrival. The original 16th Street Station was a small wooden structure built on the eastern edge of the San Francisco Bay. The new station that would replace it would be built around a mile east on Wood Street in West Oakland. The Oakland Tribune speculated in January 1911 that it would be a thing of beauty and an ornament to the Oakland waterfront. Designed by Chicago-based architect Jarvis Hunt in the Beaux-Arts style, the station made an impressive debut. At its opening in 1912, the 16th Street Station was hailed as the grandest rail station in the Bay Area. With its 30,000 square foot grand hall above a 40-foot high ceiling, passengers crossed marble floors on their way to their trains. 3 large arched windows on both the east and west sides of the terminal flooded the station with light. The walls were made of granite and were terracotta clad. 3 round lanterns hung from the coffered ceiling. According to the February 1914 issue of the Journal of Electricity, the depot was brilliantly illuminated with electric lights. On its northern elevation, an 8,000 square foot baggage wing accommodated hundreds of pieces of luggage per day. The station was one of the most impressive structures in Oakland. The station was built during the City Beautiful movement, and this was a period in which roughly from 1890 to 1920, in which civic architecture aimed not only to provide a place for commerce, but to inspire the community with its aesthetics. And as you can see here in this slide, during this time, we had several public masterworks built. The Oakland City Hall being one of them, the Federal Realty Building, which we locally call the Cathedral Building, the Oakland Technical High School, and the Oakland Municipal Auditorium, now called the Kaiser Auditorium. The 16th Street Station also boasted an innovative intermodal design with tracks for rail and eventually the East Bay Electric lines, which were also owned by Southern Pacific Railways, and it was known as the Interurban Electric Railway. What you're seeing now is a slide to show kind of like a cross section of the station, as well as the elevated track, so you could see how people could get from the station to the track using the staircase. If you look in the middle left side of this image, you'll see how they got down and to the other side to take trains, either going toward ferries or out of city, going north out of the city. The interurban streetcar system was installed in 1914 on the west side of the station and ran on elevated tracks above the baggage wing. This was the first elevated track system west of the Mississippi. With this system, it was possible for rail travelers to easily shuttle to the Southern Pacific Ferry Terminal headed for San Francisco. And once the Bay Bridge was built in 1936, they could take streetcars across the bridge. Just outside the station's main entrance, local streetcars could take passengers to East and North Oakland, to Berkeley, to Richmond, or to San Leandro. This innovative transportation infrastructure, along with a decades-long East Bay development boom following the 1906 annexation of the 1906 earthquake and Oakland's 1909 annexations of its neighboring communities, saw the East Bay's population explode. In 1910, for example, Oakland's population was 150,174. By 1920, it was over 210,000. During the station's first decade, about 160 trains a day ran through the station, bringing soldiers, entrepreneurs, farmers, educators, war industry workers, new immigrants, and African Americans fleeing the Jim Crow South. By 1940, Oakland's population had risen to 302,163. This mass migration was a demographic and cultural shift. Landing in Oakland on the City of San Francisco train from Chicago or on the Oakland Lark from Los Angeles, newcomers realized that they had arrived at a new frontier full of fresh economic and educational opportunities. The 16th Street station facilitated the mobilization of war industry workers and troops during the Second World War, and again in the 1960s during the Vietnam War era. I wanted to take a brief detour to talk about some of the people who made the station run. Here on this slide, I want to point out that culturally things were shifting here locally because so many people were coming from so many different places. This slide shows one of my favorite poems about that era, the One-Way Ticket poem by Langston Hughes, in which he mentions Oakland in the second stanza. Southern Pacific was a major employer for people moving to the Bay Area. Beside train operators, SP employed engineers, switchmen, ticket vendors, cooks, red caps, concessionaires, shoe shine men, laundresses, coach cleaners, newspaper vendors, and janitors. Southern Pacific trains carried the luxurious Pullman sleeper cars, which were staffed by an almost exclusively African-American crew of porters, cooks, and maids to serve white passengers. The cars were like swank hotels on wheels that offered travelers first-class meals and sleeping accommodations. Early on, the Pullman Porters worked 20-hour shifts and were on call to respond to passengers' need at any time of day or night. Oakland-based porters were required to live west of Adeline Street to quickly get to the station whenever called for a route. Their pay was low, $67.50 per month during the 1920s, for example. This was by no means a livable wage, but added with passenger tips, it was comparatively better than what most African Americans were making at the time. What the porters lacked in salary, they were compensated with travel experience, information, and influence. Traveling back and forth across the country, which was rare for African Americans during this time, this first half of the 20th century, they found that work on the rails was an education. They were like ambassadors for the African American migrants, providing them with useful information about where to find places to stay, to eat, how to rent a room, and where to find work. The porters brought home African American newspapers such as the Pittsburgh Courier, the Amsterdam News, and the Chicago Defender. These papers informed the East Bay's African American community of social and political activities in other parts of the country. Oaklander William Towns, for example, learned to speak Spanish and Chinese during his time as a porter. Future Oakland Mayor Lionel Wilson worked as a porter to earn money for college. Frances Albright worked as a Pullman maid before she became an employment, voting rights, and peace advocate in Berkeley. Porters were political and social leaders in their community and are widely credited with creating Oakland's Black middle class. Thomas and Wilbur Tramble write in their pictorial history, The Pullman Porters in West Oakland. The porters picked up stock tips and listened to conversations not meant for them, about how to invest in the stock market. They picked up newspapers and books that passengers left behind. Though working for low wages, they learned lessons of how whites became successful. More importantly, they realized the value of combining the principles of acquiring education and saving money. It's been estimated that Oakland was home to 100 to 150 porters at the turn of the 20th century. By 1953, the East Bay Labor Journal reported that Oakland had a larger concentration of porters than any other city in the nation. They were walking contradictions, servants on the trains and leaders in their community. According to Larry Tye, author of Rising from the Rails, he says, the very definition of his job was roiling in contradictions. He was servant as well as host. His was the best job in the community and the worst job on the train. He could be trusted with white passengers' children and safety, but for only the 5 days of a cross-country trip. Prominent among these men was Cottrell Lawrence C.L. Dellums, a native of Corsicana, Texas. As a young man, he aspired to become a lawyer, but the jobs accessible to African Americans at the time made attending law school nearly impossible. Dellums instead became a porter in 1924. Quickly, he realized that work on the rails was far from equitable. African Americans had worked on the trains since the beginning of American railroading, but it was a system that treated them as servants. All porters, cooks, and maids were Black. All supervisors were white. By the 1920s, the Pullman Company was the country's largest employer of African American men. In 1925, A. Philip Randolph established the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters and Maids, the country's first African American labor union. Its members worked to increase wages and to improve the quality of life for African American rail workers. They fought for a standard work week, pay equal to that of other unionized workers, work benefits, and the rights to collective bargaining. When Dellums was fired from the Pullman Company in 1927 for his committed activism, he was not discouraged. A. Philip Randolph hired him to work as a full-time organizer for the Brotherhood. Dellums became the Western Division vice president of the union in 1929. Though the organization's headquarters was at 1716 7th Street in West Oakland, much of the discussion about working conditions and strategizing was done right in the baggage area of the 16th Street Depot, where porters and redcaps gathered during and after their shifts. The spirit of activism and self-determination that the porters and other attendants brought home to Oakland left its mark on the city, which we still feel today. The formation and resilience of the Brotherhood improved labor rights, not only for African Americans, but other disenfranchised workers, and giving them a sense of agency that they never had before. It took 2 years of struggle for the Pullman Company to recognize the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, and another 10 years before the Brotherhood was folded into the American Federation of Labor. Here in Oakland, C.L. Dellums would broaden his advocacy for labor and civil rights as president of the local chapter of the NAACP, as a member of the Central Labor Council of Alameda County, and as a member of the statewide Fair Employment Practices Commission. He and his cohort energized the civil rights movement. Now let's swing back to the station. In 1941, the interurban train service that connected long-distance rail travelers to local streetcars was discontinued. Here's a shot of the city of Los Angeles train arriving at the Southern Pacific Ferry Terminal, also known as the Mole. It's what they call those ferry terminals. A flood of people rushed into the East Bay seeking war industry jobs in the shipyards, factories, and military bases that ring the San Francisco Bay, many of them arriving by train. Ferries were also part of Southern Pacific's transit fleet. They helped disperse people from the East Bay to San Francisco and Marin. By 1950, Oakland's population was 384,575. Rail travel steadily declined in the 1950s with the increase of automobile ownership and affordable air travel. Key system buses that you see here in this shot had replaced the streetcars that once serviced the station. Amtrak took over operations of the 16th Street station starting in 1971, ending Southern Pacific's long ownership. The station was designated a City of Oakland landmark in 1983. During the devastating Loma Prieta earthquake of October 1989, the station suffered severe structural damage. Plaster fell from the walls and ceiling to the floor. Given the widespread damage throughout the region, funds to restore the station became prohibitive. Once an outbuilding was erected on the property to serve as a temporary depot, rail service continued after that building was erected. The station's signal tower served as a type of traffic control unit, making sure trains safely entered the station. It was abandoned in 1995. Those operations were computerized and transferred, strangely enough, to Denver, Colorado. Talk about remote control. There's really that there. Caltrains ordered Amtrak to discontinue service at the 16th Street station to make way for the construction of the new freeway that would replace the collapsed Cypress Viaduct, also a victim of the earthquake. All train service at the 16th Street station was halted on August 5th, 1994. A new station opened in 1995 near Jack London Square. And here is a quote that I wanted to share with you all. Let's see if I could see it. For more than 8 decades, you see that quote here? This quote reads kind of like an eulogy of a treasured community resource. And it was written as in an article in the Oakland Tribune around the time that talk continued. Well, it didn't start in 2005, but it certainly continued and kind of reinvigorated people's interest in the station. The loss of the station didn't happen all at once, but no operation this complex and this well used by the community ever does. Since its closure, efforts to repurpose the 16th Street station have come and gone. Lured by its beauty and potential, developers have also come and gone, but none have fully committed to investing in the station's rehabilitation. Fully invested. New developments have sprung up all around the Prescott area of West Oakland, where the station is located, but the station remains empty and neglected. The Build Bridge Housing firm owned the station for 17 years, but never revitalized the station. The firm sold the property in 2022 to City Ventures, who is the current owner. They have planned a multi-story housing development that nearly surrounds the station, but they've yet to draft any plans that would bring the station back to life. While we wait for financial resources and reconstructive ideas to coalesce, the station continues to decay. The station has been squatted in and vandalized for years. Widely viewed as one of the most culturally and architecturally important buildings in the East Bay, a refurbished 16th Street station could help revitalize West Oakland. Community members invested in the station's resurrection have envisioned it as a banquet facility, a blues club, a boxing club, a grand market in the style of San Francisco's Ferry Building, and a museum dedicated to the Pullman Porters. In his 1989 appraisal of the station, San Francisco Chronicle architecture critic Alan Timko advocated strongly for its preservation, calling the station a monument. He wrote, "Almost nothing is left in California to compare with the 16th Street station." When former Bay Area Congressman Ron Dellums, nephew of C.L. Dellums, visited the station in 2005, he called the 16th Street train station the Ellis Island for the African American community on the West Coast. Even in its degraded state, the station has been used as a temporary art gallery, a film set, a temporary performance space for an opera company, and a music video location, proving that the community continues to find value in its presence. I can imagine it being transformed into a museum of Western migration, a cultural center, a school, affordable housing, a special events venue, a restaurant, or any combination of these things. Local preservation advocates have worked for years to secure the station's future. This slide shows some highlights of some of the work. Next, I think it's the next slide. We'll shuffle through these next images. These were taken by OHA member Naomi Shift, I believe. And we can see its state, its condition from these slides. And also beyond, in this particular slide, you see the new housing that is very much encroaching on what used to be SP property. And there's a signal tower and the new freeway beyond. This is news from 2005. So we'll get to a slide where I want to spend a little time kind of walking you through. And this is my pitch for naming something after Dellums. I think it was very important to quality of life in the East Bay. So here's the slide, and this will give you some highlights on the station. You can maybe do a screenshot of this, or maybe we can make this available to any of advocates, potential advocates or donors out there. If you know somebody who could raise money for the OHA in this effort, that would be great. And so it's basically working from the last 50 years or so, talking about from the time the Amtrak took over the station and what's been happening as far as advocacy work. That's in the lower section, what Oakland Heritage Alliance has done to engage developers, the succession of developers, to have input on what happens in the station, because that certainly will have impact on certainly the West Oakland community, Prescott neighborhood, but Oakland in general, based on how it gets developed. So let me continue. Local preservation advocates, oh, I read that. There have been 4 previous efforts to have the station added to the National Trust's 11 most endangered list. Currently, the Oakland Heritage Alliance is working diligently to get the station listed on the National Register of Historic Places, which can make it eligible for a large tax credit that can help finance its preservation. The organization has saved several Oakland buildings and landmarks. As the 16th Street station sits neglected in Oakland's oldest neighborhood, unmoored from its trestle and tracks divorced from its function, it awaits preservation. I think it's ironic that the 16th Street station has been used in the marketing campaigns of other new neighboring developments, campaigns that have often alluded to the rail station being a desirable cultural magnet. Yet, despite its potential, it has not found a developer fully committed to bringing it back to life. I can't say that enough. The recession of the early 1990s, the dot-com bust of the 2000s, the economic meltdown of 2008, and the closure of the Oakland Redevelopment Agency in 2011, all these things contributed to the lack of resources needed to restore the station. But here's the thing. The Union Station in Kansas City, also designed by Jarvis Hunt, is a larger version of our 16th Street station. And from this slide, you could see the similarities. The wings on both sides of the station, the three large windows that are niched in really beautifully. This station has been rehabilitated, and it now houses a movie theater, a planetarium, a science museum, a live theater, and an exhibit space. Now, the advantage of this station is that it is still a functioning train station. And so the argument to develop the station in a more robust way and have it be multifunctional was probably an easier get than our disconnected station here in Oakland. Oakland's 16th Street Station rehabilitation depends not only on capital, but a sincere investment in West Oakland in general and in the Prescott neighborhood in particular. Its dereliction tells a larger story, not just about architectural preservation, but about community investment. West Oakland has been historically neglected, despite the fact that it's Oakland's root neighborhood. Currently, the station is a victim of a demolition through neglect. Any reasonable plan to use the space, even on a temporary basis, has become physically too hazardous now for it to be occupied. Estimates for the restoration of the station have been quoted at a prohibitive $100 million. Funding will have to come from a variety of government, philanthropic, and public sources. So if you're interested in helping us save the 16th Street station, these are some things that you can do. You can sign the petition. You can join Oakland Heritage Alliance or donate to oaklandheritage.org. You can contact your local elected officials and let them know your vision or your desire to have this resource, this wonderfully beautiful resource, repurposed. You can also volunteer if you have experience writing grants, if you're willing to do outreach, help raise funds, and or connect members and officers of OHA with other redevelopment agents, not redevelopment, but reuse developers or credit experts. We would appreciate that as well. So you can also spread the word on social media if you are a social media person, or just send emails or talk to people you know or drive them around. Fortunately, the station is getting a lot of eyes on it now because it's, you know, half a block away or a block away from the Oakland Ballers Stadium, the Raymundi Park. And so a lot of people are, you know, I've gone to one of their baseball games, and which was a lot of fun. And a lot of people are saying, "Oh, what's that?" And so the interest is there when you see this grand building fenced in, dislocated from its function. You wonder, what could we do with this? Because they're never going to build anything as beautiful like it again. Anyway, during my time managing the Oakland History Center, I helped residents, politicians, journalists, historic preservationists, and architects learn about Oakland's built environment. They understood that our buildings communicate important messages to us about our common values, our experiences, ambitions, and our expectations. Our built environment informs our understanding of how spaces serve, support, and inspire us, as in the days of the City Beautiful movement. The 16th Street Station holds compelling stories of transportation innovation, economic self-determination, and urban development. By restoring this monument to mass migration, we can help revitalize a community, pay tribute to our shared cultural heritage, and to make way for future opportunities. So let's do it. To learn more, I have things here that we can put in the chat if someone could copy some of these. If any of you are interested in any of these, Bay Curious and East Bay Yesterday have both done wonderful reports on the station. I have the URL there. You can also learn more about the station at the Oakland History Center. Once it reopens, it's on the second floor of the main library. You can also access some resources online, certainly, through the Oakland History Center, but also through the Library of Congress and other resources, blogs and so forth. The African American Museum and Library in Oakland also has a C.L. Dellum's paper in which there are a number of documents about the Pullman Porters and their development and growth and importance. There's also a video that I thought would be interesting and inspiring on Vimeo about the station, showing that came from 2012, not 1912, but 2012, during the centennial of the station that year was, that show people engaging the station and trying to clean up the grounds and so forth. And of course, also certainly go to the Oakland Heritage Alliance website. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I hope I've inspired your interest in the station, and I hope you get involved with us in some kind of way to let more people know about it. Certainly let your city council and the mayor know about it. We want to preserve this really, really important building. It's important to our culture here in Oakland, and we've lost so many wonderful, beautiful, and well-built buildings in Oakland, just, out of lack of use. So I thank you so much for allowing me to share my impressions and my research about this wonderful place. So thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. I think there's a little bit of interest in this station because the Q&A is starting to blow up. The chat is blowing up. I love it. So once again, thank you, thank you, thank you. I had to track Dorothy down. I was like, Dorothy, you are the expert on this. You have got to talk about this station. It's almost, I will always say this, is almost laughable that we have to even do this, that we even have to advocate for this station. It's almost a no-brainer. But anyway, very importantly, once again, thank you. And what I would like to do now is introduce a couple of my co-workers, co-conspirators, passionate folks from the Oakland Heritage Alliance who's going to be available to answer some questions. And there are quite a few questions. And I think there's a number one question that I definitely think should be answered first. But let me do a quick intro. So joining us now with Dorothy are two other board members from the Oakland Heritage Alliance, Daniel Levy, who is our president, and Naomi Schiff, who I like to say Naomi is the old G of our preservation efforts because she has been around since the 80s on this effort. So as the president of our OHA, Daniel is a regional rail and Oakland history enthusiast and brings his professional skills as a senior software engineer to our OHA web outreach and, very importantly, just the organization as a whole. Naomi, like I said, has been a member and a volunteer since the early 1980s and currently chairs the Preservation Action Committee, where she is a strong and effective, and let me just emphasize effective, advocate for historical preservation in Oakland. So thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Naomi. Once again, thank you, Dorothy, for joining us on this talk about the station. And I think probably the number one station question is, how can people get involved in saving this station?
Okay, who's going to answer that?
Okay, I think that's a very basic, straightforward question. How can people, we have 131 people watching this program right now, and another God knows how many hundreds or thousands are going to see it later. How can people effectively and efficiently get involved in the effort to save this station?
Right now, joining OHA, and if you like, you can always contact us at info@oaklandheritage.org, and we will respond. That's the first thing, because we can keep the information flowing, and that's important. We will embark on a community discussion about the station soon, and try to incorporate as many individuals and organizations as we can. What you got, Daniel?
Sorry, yeah, I was trying to find the unmute button. Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, we have a lot of ways that you can possibly get involved. You know, one is just going by the station, checking it out. That's something just to feel some connection to it. If you have stories, personal stories, please let us know. We're always learning more about what happened there, how things worked, the history, things like that. You know, we're by no means the know-all, be-all experts. So please tell us what we're missing, what we don't know, how we can learn from you. Certainly, if you live in Oakland or, you know your council person, please communicate with them, tell them this is an important building for you. If you're an architect, please let us know. And we're trying to rethink what this site could look like. Right now we're reacting to the existing plans, but we don't exactly have a new plan that we're trying to push forward to say that, hey, we don't think this one is appropriate. How do we create that community vision for what we do think is appropriate for that site to bring the station back? Additionally, if you go to oaklandheritage.org, we have a lot of information, a lot of links, to the various music videos, newspaper articles, podcasts, things like that have been published. So definitely check those out. And we have a link to a petition that we're putting forth that has about 1,800 folks signed on to it. So we're really trying to build up this community voice and this community power to really advocate for this building at the city level. So signing that petition is a great first step at oaklandheritage.org to help us communicate with you and to demonstrate to the city that we're all rowing in the same direction to save this building.
And I also want to throw in, here's a key issue, it seems to be, and it always comes down to, is money. And as it's a nonprofit, we're a small but mighty group of folks trying to do this. If you have any contacts, whether or not it's grants, grant writers, donation, because ultimately it always come down to, can we make this a financially viable thing? It's the nice to do. Is it right for the community? Is it the right thing emotionally to do, historically do? Yes, but we got to pay for it. So if anyone has any access to, like I say, grant writers, grants, or even deep pocket partners. I know there was a mention about the train station in Detroit. The deep pocket partner there was Ford. So they put in $1 billion, they turned it into a tech hub. It's that kind of partnership that we're looking for to be able to say this station is a viable unit, and here we're either willing to partner, support it, get the ball rolling. So it comes down to, does anyone know about money? And then also, very importantly, a historical developer. I'm not saying anything in regards to city ventures, but we need someone who can look at this building and say, this is the use that can we see for it. This is how much it would cost. This is how we can make it structurally sound, so forth and so forth, and have this detailed conversation about what do you do with 14,000 square feet that it's basically 3 or 4 empty boxes and a rail train in the back. How do you use it? Anybody else wants to add on to?
I also think the success of rehabilitation efforts, these major rehabilitation efforts, I'm thinking of my hometown, St. Louis. Union Station has been rehabilitated. Kansas City, as I shared in my presentation, has been rehabilitated. One argument that I think works for a lot of cities is coming up with plans that will engage as many people as possible. Like the success of Kansas City's station to me appears to be, we are catering to people on several levels. We have a science museum that'll draw children and families. We have a live theater that will draw adults who are interested in live theater, and just kind of multi-purpose use seems to be more a viable strategy than saying it's just going to be for these select group of people, or people who can afford condos or something like that. It would be great if we could do like a multi-use, and I don't know if this has been suggested by any of the current developer now, but I think that works better, because you have everybody, as they did during the time the station was a rail station. You have everybody coming in, and I think that's what could save the station, if and lure investors in by advocating for this. Every time the station is open, it's serving a multitude of people.
Okay.
That's a very good point. And the beauty of the station is that it has so many different spaces. It has the space in front, it has the main hall, it has the baggage wing, it has the elevated tracks, it has the signal tower. So you could think about different uses for each of those spaces to activate them at different times and provide, services for different groups of people. So that's a very
Absolutely.
good point.
Absolutely.
And to Felicia's point about money, we know the money is there. I think, the SF Art Institute in San Francisco just got bought by an individual, I believe, for $50 million. There's very wealthy people in the Bay Area. So, I think we're just trying to connect those two groups of people through, presentations like this and through our advocacy. So if you know people with a lot of money, please, please let us know. So
if anybody knows Oprah or, people of that ilk.
I think we need to go with Tyler Perry. Tyler seems to have the
He already has a film plantation down in Georgia. He already has this stuff.
I would like to just quickly address, there's several questions in the chat about the relationship with the developer and the current status. And I think I could say that pretty quickly. The property north of the station is vacant. There's a big parcel there. The station itself is part of a purchase. This company, City Ventures, purchased the entire thing, the station plus this empty lot. And they would like to build 91 owner units on it. The thing that has alarmed us about their plans is that we saw their initial submissions, and on those plans they show their 90 units, and they show a fence around the station with no real plan to do anything, which we perceive as a recipe for demolition by neglect or by the next earthquake. And so our efforts have been twofold. One, we would like them to make sure that their development doesn't impair the future reuse of the station by coming too close to it. And two, we'd like them to figure out some kind of way to rehab the station and get it reused. And they are somewhat willing to think about that, although they certainly haven't offered any money. But it would probably require a specialized other development firm who would enter into some arrangement with them to do that. There are some conditions of approval attached to the station that were passed in 2005, and so the city does have some power over what happens at the station itself. And our relationship with them is distant but cordial. I guess that's a fair way to put it.
I think that's a very politically correct way to say it. I love it.
They don't want to talk to us much. photographs. So we are grateful for that because in applying for the National Register, you have to submit some recent photographs, and they did let us take some. So this is a good thing. So we don't know the answer, except that we too are very interested in public access and use of the station, and in that being something both culturally and architecturally appropriate. I hope that was clear enough.
And there was a question about, do we know who the architect was who worked with them on the site plan?
Yes, we do. I can pull that up for you while you answer all the other questions.
Okay, and then there was a question regarding, and could a land trust purchase the property and have it more publicly run and benefiting rather than mostly benefiting the developer?
I could answer that in two ways. One, when this whole thing happened in 2005, by 2008, there was a nonprofit set up to administer the station called Rails, which stood for a bunch of words. And that was all a good idea, except that it was put together in a time when redevelopment funding was going to, it seemed, become available for the station. And once redevelopment was killed off statewide by our former mayor, Jerry Brown, that money disappeared. We don't really know what it will cost to fix this thing because there need to be new studies done about what level you restore it to, what the use is, and whether there are new construction methods that would help. It hasn't been studied lately. However, a number of developers have looked at it in the past, and so there's some knowledge about it.
Okay. And are there any community plans, meetings to discuss and come up with plans and designs on how to use this?
There have been three rounds of community discussion in the past, 2005, 2008, 2011. The first one was the enormous effort mounted by the West Oakland community to keep the baggage wing standing because it was proposed for demolition. And we were successful in getting that to happen. Then that group and Rails did a bunch of community, each of them did a major series of community discussion, but the last one is really about 2011 or 2012, so it needs to be revisited, and we're working on that now.
Okay. I have a quick question for Dorothy. Obviously, we are totally focused on this station, but are there any other structures in Oakland that you think are just as viable and just as important, that are just as neglected as the station, such as maybe the bus station?
The bus station, especially the bus station. It breaks my heart every time I go past that station. And even before it was a bus station, well, it was a beautiful bus station early on. And there are some architectural design elements in it that are worth saving, like the roof. I would say definitely the bus station, Casper's Hot Dogs on 45th and Telegraph, Hooper's Chocolate shop on Hooper's Chocolates, which used to be Margaret Burnham's Chocolates before that. OHA has written a story about that in their newsletter. That could be saved. That's a very unique building. It'd be lovely to save that and put that to some good use. So we don't have much, mid-century Googie architecture examples of that left. I'd like to see some of that preserved. There was also on Telegraph Avenue downtown, there was the Quick Ways drive-in where you'd get your burgers, and before I was around, it was kind of like a car hop sort of place that people of a certain age remember fondly. There are a number of buildings, some of whose names I don't know what they ever were, but a lot of beautiful buildings in Oakland that could be repurposed and rehabilitated. My husband, every time we drive into Deep East Oakland, my husband always mentions the Sunshine Biscuit Factory. He said even if they can't redevelopment, at least fix the sign. So for those of us who grew up in Oakland, we have these memories and take very personally the altered built landscape, you know.
Yes, I have a place by the Sunshine Biscuit place, and it'd be great if they would at least light up the sign, clean it up, rehab it. Okay, I'm going down the whole list. But speaking of signs, that was one of the things that really got the Fox Theater popping. Is there anything that's a similar action that can be taken for the station? Like, could we redo the lawn? Could we redo, make the tracks beautiful? But there is that thing that kind of gets the ball going on the station.
Or we can turn the tracks into something like the High Line in New York, in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
Repurpose those tracks and make them something, useful or interpretive or something.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of things about that. The elevated track platform, both one of the pictures that Dorothy showed us a little while ago, and one that our consultant has turned up for the National Register application, show that the elevated tracks behind the station actually were glazed. There was a window, a set of windows protecting it, and that's really interesting because there has been some discussion about how to reuse that platform, and one of the issues is the racket from the freeway. Uh, so, it was really, I had never seen those pictures. That was really an amazing thing to see. And yes, the High Line has been invoked in discussing our little platform, which is, of course, a lot shorter. But yes, there's several questions in the chat about the train tracks. The train tracks are basically removed except on the other side of the freeway, and so they no longer connect to the station. And that is a real problem for our station because it really can't be reconnected in that exact way that it was before. There's a freeway in the middle.
And there is a question about the National Park Service the Pullman Museum in Chicago. Has it been engaged at all?
Yes, our National Register consultant has talked to the folks in Chicago. We haven't talked to them directly about cooperating on a project or anything so far, but we might.
Okay. And then there was a question about creating a Black Panther historical park. Could this work help preserve the station? And also, and before I forget, I know that there's supposed to be a bike lane, a bike trail. If someone can answer about the Black Panther historical park first, and then talk about the bike trail that's being built to connect the Bay Bridge.
Yeah, I believe in West Oakland, there's an effort to create a new national park service site dedicated to the Black Panthers. It'll be more of a distributed, it'll be more of a distributed system. That's something that we're definitely looking into to see if we can connect to that.
What do you mean by distributed system?
I don't believe it'll be like a national park in the sense that there will be, a physical single park dedicated to the Black Panthers, but it's my understanding that there'll be multiple sites throughout Oakland and throughout the East Bay that commemorate that history. I can find a link and post it for folks.
Yeah, that's similar to how the Richmond Park is, and the Rosie the Riveter. All those facilities are scattered but related. The other question, I just lost it. Okay.
It was about the bike park, the bike connection.
There is a link project going on which is supposed to connect bicycle access to the existing bicycle lane that is on the new part of the Bay Bridge. And it isn't that far away, actually. There might be a good way to connect to that link project. And so we're going to have to investigate what the possibilities are there. The station is located between that area, which is the sort of the Grand Avenue area, and the West Oakland BART station. There is bus service in some ways towards the station, but it is not at the moment a real good transit hub that would have to be developed.
Okay. And then what about the efforts on 7th Street? The revitalized 7th Street, which, as we know, was the main commercial corridor before Oakland got its hands on its urban renewal efforts. What is the relationship between us and them, or the station and that group? Are there ways to be able to tie the efforts on revitalizing 7th Street?
Well, of course, the obvious one is what Dorothy mentioned, which is that the Porters had their office on 7th Street. And so, and the building is still there. So what, again, in thinking about a distributed historic resource, you know, you might be able to do something kind of interesting with that connection, and then also connect it to the African American Museum and Library of Oakland, which is further up 14th Street.
Any comment, Dorothy?
I'm sorry, I was typing out an answer in the Q&A about Sacramento Station, which was not designed by Jarvis Hunt. I'm being a librarian here. I'm answering reference questions.
Well, that's good, because I'm trying to watch the questions, see who answered, and so forth. So there is an effort to revitalize 7th Street. I know there has not been a real tight connection between the efforts for the train station and for 7th Street. Is there a way to be able to connect it to, or should maybe this is a call out to our community to help us be able to tie those efforts for 7th Street along with the efforts we're trying to do for the train station?
That kind of ties into a question we have in the Q&A that I was just about to type an answer to. The question from Peter is, do you think that the station's non-downtown location has been a significant barrier to its reuse as compared to other successfully redeveloped stations in other cities? I feel like having grown up in West Oakland for a chunk of my childhood, my teen years were spent there. West Oakland does not has had a hard time drawing redevelopment money and redevelopment energies to it. There's always like this long protracted fights, it seems to me, when it comes to rehabilitating something in West Oakland. Sometimes it's a labor issue, sometimes it's a resource issue, a money issue, or concept issue. But, you know, I'd like my colleagues from OHA to chime in on that. I have a feeling that seeing, you know, West Oakland change as I did, you know, I grew up on 13th and Market and seeing things kind of get proposed and then stalled for either lack of money or lack of other kinds of resources. And then they just lay fallow the ideas or the plans or the actual physical execution of the reconstruction for years. And so does that have something to do? I can't help but think it has something to do with it being perceived as a largely poor African American community. Perceived. I want to make sure I say that, perceived as such. And now I don't know. I don't want to say more. that's where I am with it, Peter, to address your question. I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that it's not downtown. I think it has something to do with this kind of historic heel dragging when it comes to redeveloping West Oakland.
I think from our perspective too, it has to do with organizing for us, and we need to be that advocate. I think there's been so many efforts, and that we're so much work that has gone into this, and we need to continue that from the stuff going on in 2006 to create the Wood Street zoning district that a bunch of folks have worked on, including Marcus, who I see here, who is taking care of the station, making sure that it was occupied and looked after
Thank
to
you,
get
Marcus.
it to this point. Yeah. And I think we need to just make it easier. We need to make the best decision for the developer to fix the station. Right now, it's easier for them to say, hey, we're gonna build what we want to build, and it's easy. We don't need to do anything with the station, but we need to work together to make it harder for them to not build at the station. Really create that pressure from the community to make it happen. Because it is, yeah, it's definitely a challenge.
Okay. I just have a quick, first of all, if there are any more questions, please put them in the Q&A. Second of all, I think there was a question about being able to copy the chat. So Lisa, I know you are handling that. And I think individuals want to be able to copy the chat because there's so much juiciness going in there.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how to override the setting on that, but I will make sure that everything that's been in the chat goes into the follow-up email to today's program to all attendees.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then does anybody, just a quick back to a railroad question. It was a question regarding why do they call ferry terminals moles?
Oh, that's my favorite question. I don't remember the answer to it. This was a question that came up in the Oakland History Center quite often, and I don't remember the answer. Sorry.
I can answer it.
Yeah.
So a mole is, if you think about your old chemistry class, a mole is a size of mass, an amount of mass. And you build a mole by dumping a bunch of stuff in the bay or in an ocean. And that's why it's called a mole. It's a chunk of stuff, in this case, fill, right? And so they dumped a whole bunch of fill into the bay to make a pseudo island, which was the end of the long pier. And there are moles in other places, therefore it is a general term, it's not a local term.
To add a little bit to that, the function is really to extend the rails as far as you can so that the ferry ride is shorter, because you can travel further by rail more efficiently than you can by boat. So the bay was pretty shallow, so they could extend these wharfs and moles out pretty far. I think the Key System one off of 40th Street, when it was built, was dubbed the longest in the world or something like that. When it was built.
I love it. And then there was a question from Ellen. I'm gonna throw Ellen on the spot here. And it said, have we asked the Port of Oakland to become engaged? They have spent many years as an environmental and cultural resource consultant, supporting the port and the unions in funding for dredging and capital project. And Ellen says she can speak to the port leadership if agreed that that is a good idea. What's everyone's thoughts on working with the port?
Well, they don't actually own any land around there at the moment, so I don't know the answer. Maybe. They certainly might have archival material of interest, because there was more connection between the port and that station historically than there is now. But I don't know I don't know the answer, because I don't know whether they take on stuff that's beyond their borders.
So yeah, maybe to answer your question, let's if you're able to email us, let's chat with them. We can always see what those connections might be like. I know the port is trying to do a lot of green stuff with electrifying trucks and stuff like that. So they're trying to reinvest in the community. So perhaps the station is another way for them to give back to West Oakland.
I'm gonna be more blunt. Yes, we love the idea. Let's work together. Any support is greatly appreciated.
I
And
mean, we could find support for the station, you know, even on the kind of ground level. I'm just thinking of looking at maybe connecting with people in the Prescott neighborhood to find out what it is they would like to see happen to the station, since they're the ones who live around it, grew up around it, see it every day. It would be interesting, or maybe worth our while, as an organization, a preservation organization, to engage the community around the station. What would they like to see happen, or provided there?
Definitely, that's the next step.
Mhm.
And we did have a lot of participation from community in these previous discussions. And so what we
Mhm.
do is go back, look at that stuff and see what's changed and what's new and what people want now. Uh,
Mhm.
because some of the things that were proposed in 2005 are probably kind of stale now. Uh,
Mhm.
but the other thing is, and I think it's really important, it it's kind of important for the station itself not to become a generator of gentrification that only welcomes newcomers. And
Mhm.
the other reason to really engage community is because there's already a lot of that stress in the
mhm.
and so it's not just who lives there, it's who has been living there the whole time. And there are people all over Oakland who have strong connections to the station.
Indeed.
Okay. Is there any last question? Is there any? Oh, there was a question about, is Councilman Fife involved?
Yeah, we have spoken with her and she's very supportive, and we will continue to do that as things move along. This project, somebody asked somewhere in the chat, has the project been approved? No, they have put in a preliminary application. It is under what's called SB 330, which is the streamlining thing that the state passed. There, the city is apparently contemplating whether further environmental work needs to be done. We don't know too much more about the status than that, but the city is not moving super quickly to approve it. And they may have an inkling that the community is watching.
And if you have any special ties to Councilman Fife, we would greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, or any other council person in Oakland. If you got a special relationship with them and they can get us past any gatekeepers or just get their interest, we would gladly love to talk. And then there was a question about, can anyone speak to how Kansas City Station got repurposed?
Yeah, that's some investigation we're gonna have to do to find out how they got the ball rolling there.
Okay. And then there was a question, how close is this to being deemed eligible for more protection? Does anyone want to take on that question of that very detailed application?
The National Register does not protect properties. I'm sorry to tell everybody of this. You can knock down a National Register property.
And they have, I'm sure.
It's unfortunate, but our society is based on property rights in part, and people can do what they want with their property. So, moral persuasion, and certainly we want to get it on the National Register because it would unlock some funding. But the sad truth is that you can declare something as historic as you want. You could knock down the White House tomorrow if somebody wanted to do it enough.
But it has been shown, the application and the information about the train station has been shown to the person in charge of it at the national park level. He loved that station. He said he will gladly approve it, but obviously we've got to get the application from the state level up to the national level, hopefully within the next 3 to 6 months. to in turn get it on their radar to say yay or nay on there, or else I'm going to trap him again on the bus and tell him, hey, I think his name, it wasn't Jim, but whoever I forgot his name was, you said that you would approve this as a national treasure. So I think getting it done is getting them to say yes on a designation will be the easy part. Getting the developer to accept it, that's the hard part. They have the right to turn it down. Any other questions? I think that I know we're at like an hour and 15 minutes, but the questions keep coming in. And I would say, is there any, and Lisa, what is your thoughts? Are there any key stuff that Dorothy, Daniel, Naomi, is there anything you wish someone had asked or you want to emphasize while we still have 86 people on the air still watching us? Is there anything you really want them to know?
There was a question for Dorothy back at the very beginning of the Q&A toward the end of her presentation, who was asking if you knew if there were any former African-American railroad employees who wrote about their experiences or kind of where people might find out more about
I answered
some of the info that you shared. You did? Okay.
Yeah, I mentioned Theodore Cornweeble's what a name, right? Theodore Cornweeble's encyclopedic work on what is it, Railroads in the African American Experience is a wonderful book. Also, somebody mentioned the Pullman Museum in Chicago, which I recently visited a few months ago. That's where the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters was founded in Chicago. And I also mentioned Rising from the Rails by Larry Tye, which I mentioned in my presentation. As far as individual employees, you'd have to consult organizations or repositories like the African American Museum and Library in Oakland, which is part of the Oakland Public Library system. They certainly, those kinds of repositories, libraries, could answer a lot of questions, and they probably have saved a lot of documents like manuscripts or oral histories, I should say, of people who have worked on the railroads. If that person is still on the chat. I'm also answering one of Peter's questions about was Oakland still served by I'm trying to type and write at the same time. Was Oakland still served by
railroad
after the 16th Street station closed? And certainly the Jack London station opened in 1995, and the Emeryville station opened, so Oakland was still served by train service.
And there was one other question, again, from much earlier, and I apologize if this was addressed while I was reading through questions. You mentioned earlier that one of the estimates for the station was about $100 million. Someone asked if there
somewhere, but I don't know if that's still a standing sum.
It is not. It is not. The last estimates that anybody made that were possible to support was about 50 million, but it was many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But it really depends on what you want to do to the structure. And there is an enormous range of possibility between a kind of stabilize it, let it look funky, and do things in there anyway, which is like what the opera company did, all the way to rebuilding structures on the interurban platform and making a giant shiny thing out of it. And so the cost range is enormous and quite dependent on what the plan would be.
And Naomi, that feeds into what the specific question was. Do you know if there have been estimates for the cost of just making the building seismically sound?
The Connolly Company did an engineering report many years ago, but it was around 2005. And so I think that would all have to be reopened and studied again now. And that, to my knowledge, has not been done.
There was a couple other questions about, working with the ballers and connecting, with the Link 21 project and, BART and things like that. I mean, I think we're definitely actively looking to connect with the ballers. They're the new baseball team in West Oakland. They're very much focused on their first season in West Oakland, but we're definitely hoping to partner with them as time goes on and they have a little bit more breathing room after their first season is complete to possibly expand their, what they're thinking about or how we can work together to connect those two sites. And then
And
with
once again,
regards,
if
go ahead.
anyone has a really good connection to the ballers, we will greatly appreciate that just to get past the gatekeeper and build that relationship.
Yes, good, yes. And then
Gotta keep asking, Daniel.
Yeah, no, I love it. And then with Link 21, that's a very much second Transbay 2 focused project and possibly connected to taking down 980. But hey, if we can connect the station to that would be great as well. Thank you, Gabe.
Yeah, there's also, a series. One, I would just say a huge, thank you to the audience. There's several comments, both in the chat and Q&A, of people saying, that they're interested in helping and how do they get involved. And I'll be sure to put all of you in contact with Felicia, Daniel, and Naomi following this presentation so that you can get involved. Another interesting one that I don't think we addressed specifically, but I think we've talked about similar ideas. Someone had a suggestion of, could we secure loan of an old Pullman car for a temporary installation near the station and bring people there for tours or presentations, or just kind of suggesting other things that could bring some attention to the station. I don't know how much access you have to the building at the moment, since it's not, since it's privately owned. And I know, as you said, that City Ventures has let you in to take photos, but I'm not sure how close you can get to the building on a regular basis.
I think it'd be just a question of how friendly they want to be and how much they feel it might be a hazard having people go into the building. Could you put a cart on the ground? Yes, there is room. Will they allow us to do that? That's a question that we would have to really, really, really ask numerous times, and let's see if they'll answer us. I doubt it.
But also it's an issue of whatever we bring to kind of provide some interpretive stimulus to the site regarding railroading. We'd have to some way protect it, because if somebody's going to lend you a Pullman car, trust and believe they're going to want it protected. Someone in the chat, someone in the Q&A is answering a question about Caltrans and reparations, which is interesting and probably a conversation for another day.
Maybe it could be another presentation by Dorothy Lazard, historian.
The thing about Caltrans, they were very involved in 1990. They did study the station, and they did hire a historic consultant who did find that it was eligible for the National Register. So they sort of probably feel like they did their due diligence about the historic aspect then. But of course, reparations is a great idea. And it is true that the station is heavily impacted by an elevated road to its west. And that was, I don't know if it was entirely funded by Caltrans or Caltrans and the port. That does have a big impact on the station. So it's not completely crazy to think that one might ask anyway. And it certainly, but I will say that the reason the cypress structure was built to the west of the station has a lot to do with people who lived in West Oakland and did not appreciate that 880 was coming through the middle of West Oakland. And so many neighborhood organizations and people valiantly fought Caltrans to put the freeway to the west of the residential areas of West Oakland. And I don't have any quarrel with that. It was a good move, and it did help to tie the community back together.
Okay. All righty, I think that's it on the Q&A. I would say once again, Dorothy, thank you so much for doing this presentation.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Lisa, for allowing Dorothy to do the presentation, because I think it's a fabulous topic, and having Daniel and Naomi join us to answer all of the questions. I'm very excited that I think this station can be saved. I think it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot of money, and it's going to take a concerted effort. And so anything that can be any assistance, we're asking everyone to throw their hands in and help us save this station, including we need a name for our efforts. There was the Friends of the Fox. There was probably a name for the station Detroit. If anyone has a suggestion, the name of this effort, let us know. Maybe we should do like a social media contest. What name should we call this, as opposed to Saving the 16th, which I'm sure is probably already trademarked, as opposed to Saving the Wood Street Station? We need something short. We need something quick. We need something sexy. So that way we can brand our efforts and get it out there to the marketplace.
And t-shirts. No, I'm joking.
And t-shirts.
I'm joking.
So Lisa, what's our next step?
No, I think that was a phenomenal closeout to the program. You know, I have mentioned before, as a statewide organization, I'm just so pleased to have been able to work with Dorothy on her fantastic presentation for this, and to be able to give all of you a platform to really highlight your efforts to save this station, and really all of the work you do in Oakland. It is certainly not limited to this one station. It's amazing what your organization is able to do and has done in the past, and we really applaud all of that. So thank you to all of you for joining us for the Q&A. Thank you so much to Dorothy for your valuable insights. The history and importance of 16th Street Station. Even growing up in the Bay Area, I knew so little about it and know so much more now. I really hope that this program galvanizes all of your efforts to save the station. Dorothy, I hope people go out and buy your book. I got it in the mail yesterday. I cannot wait to read it. I'm so looking forward to reading it. So
I just found out yesterday, Lisa, that I got shortlisted for the Northern California Book Awards.
That's phenomenal. Congratulations, Dorothy. That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, all the more reason I need to crack it open tonight when I get home.
Yes.
So I can get out ahead of that. On behalf of the California Preservation Foundation, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. We really hope you enjoyed today's program. I believe my colleague John put a link in the chat a while ago. You'll also be redirected upon closing your Zoom window to a survey where you can tell us how we did today and suggest topics for future programs. We hope to see you at another program soon. We have one in a couple of weeks on 3D documentation and reproduction, as well as some more in the works in the fall on legacy business programs and the deconstruction of Wayfarers Chapel. You can find information about these programs. They become available on our website, californiapreservation.org. While you're there, in addition to knowing that all of you are going to go run off and support OHA immediately following this program, we hope that you will also consider supporting the California Preservation Foundation, either through membership or a donation. You can find that also at our website, and I'll be sure to provide all of the links from today's program. It's going to be a very long email that I sent to all of our attendees following, but we'll have the link for everything. or excuse me, the recording for today's program and links to everything shared, as well as all the ways that you can get involved in saving this beautiful station. Thank you all again. Hope to see you at a new program or another program. And thank you again so much to Dorothy and to our Q&A